Silviculture, lecture number 12. In previous lecture, we have studied about the clear felling system and continuing the silviculture system. In this lecture, we are going to study about the shelterwood system. So as silviculture system already is defined as the science of producing and tending a forest from regeneration to harvest. So all the silviculture systems including three basic components. One is harvest, then is regeneration and tending. So these components are designed to mimic the natural processes and condition foresting healthy, vigorous stand of trees. So as silviculture system is a very simple, three things we have to understand. One is harvesting. Harvesting is necessary for the removal of the old and mature trees and get the new regeneration to come in the same place. So regenerate and establishment of the species is the prime duty of a forester. Then after the regeneration has set up, established, and now it is growing to a new forest, there is a tending operation which is very important for the tree species to grow in a healthy and a very vigorous and a good condition. So again there is a cycle which we come back to harvest. So this way we can make a cycle making harvesting, regeneration, tending. So this is a silviculture system. So high forest system already been classified in system of concentrated regeneration, that is clear felling system, and shelterwood system. System of diffuse regeneration, that is selection system and group selection system. And we have accessory system where we have two-storied high forest system, high forest with reserve system, and improvement felling. Here in system of concentrated regeneration, we have studied about the clear felling system, clear strip system, the alternate strip system. And in a shelterwood system, we are going to study now about the uniform system, group system, shelterwood strip system, Wagner's blender samslag, Eberhard wedge system, strip and group system, Indian irregular shelterwood system, and irregular shelterwood system. Now among this shelterwood system, this irregular shelterwood system and Indian irregular shelterwood system are a bit uneven age, and as system of concentrated regeneration under shelterwood, we have almost even age from uniform system, group system, Wagner's blender samslag, shelterwood strip system, Eberhard wedge system, strip and group system. But these two, irregular shelterwood system and Indian irregular shelterwood system, are uneven age. Now in today's lecture number 12, we are going to study about the uniform system. So this uniform system will study, which is very important, as the name says, the shelterwood uniform system, because in clear felling system, felling was done in one operation and requires large sum of money, and the success of the regeneration or establishment depend the correct choice of species. Not only choice of the species, we need to match the species with the site, soil should support, the climate should support. All these things is very important for the clear felling system. But where large sum of money is not available, and species which follow the nature, and it is very difficult to regenerate, as the species has to go for the removal of our wood gradually. So we need to regenerate the species naturally. So we have to go for shelterwood system, where we remove the overwood in successive felling depending on the progress of regeneration. So in the uniform shelterwood system, we generate the forest under the shelterwood system, but all the shelterwood system has to be regenerated, where the shelter of the old trees as the overwood is removed in 2 or more operations. So also we say that system of successive regeneration felling. Now what do we mean by regeneration felling? The felling, we do it to regenerate the crop. So we can see here, this is the overwood acting as a shelter, And here we are getting the regeneration just because of the light we are making the admit of light between this crown, and we give slowly the light because we want to mimic with the nature. And you can see the regeneration is coming up. As the regeneration is growing more older, becoming sapling in a pool, we are removing more number of trees slowly in a successive regeneration felling, we can call it, and slowly our regeneration has been established enough. Then later we remove the shelter which is not required. As natural regeneration progresses, we can see how it progresses. The overwood is gradually removed, and when it is not required any protection, because protection against climatic conditions, protection against insulation, frost or warmth or heat, so when the regeneration doesn't require any protection, the shelter wood is removed completely, allowing the new crop to use the growing space. Now we can see this is the growing space where we allow this new recruit which has turned up to pole stage and becoming a young tree to use the full space and become a big tree. Then we remove the shelter. So that is Shelterwood system. Now in this lecture we are going to study the Uniform Shelterwood system. The word uniform here indicates itself, it is uniform, equal. So here the crop is even aged. Now what is uniform system? It is defined as aiming at concentrated regeneration in which the canopy is uniformly opened up over the whole area of a compartment. See, this is the overwood, or we can say it is a shelterwood, which is, we can see it is uniformly spaced here because we are removing it uniformly. We are removing the tree species or overwood or shelterwood uniformly for the progress of the regeneration to come up here. So again, let's go back. Aiming at concentrated regeneration in which the canopy is uniformly opened up of the whole area. We can see here we are opening up in a uniform way. So here it is not uniform way. We can see it is not uniform. This is not a uniform system. It is something like irregular. So in uniform system, our objective is to open up the shelter wood in a uniform in the compartment for the regeneration. So as already stated, removal of overwood in the uniform system, like any other shelter wood system, is carried out in 2 or more successive felling in sequence. So this is a sequence. I'll talk about this sequence one after another at some interval. There is some interval between this sequence. So it is called, collectively we called it as a regeneration felling. So let's not forget this regeneration felling. What do you mean by regeneration felling? So this is the sequence of the successive felling. So it involves seeding felling, secondary felling and final felling. But I have included here preparatory felling also. So we should also understand what do you mean by preparatory felling. So let's go back again once again. Regeneration felling means seeding felling, secondary felling and final felling. These are successive felling in sequence and in the interval of time. So first of all, let's understand what do you mean by preparatory felling. So there is a preparatory felling which may be at the end of the rotation or before the seeding felling. The first stage is called seeding felling. So let's go for the definition of preparatory felling. What do you mean by preparatory felling? Preparatory felling, a felling made usually towards the end of rotation, or I say before the seeding felling, with the objective of creating conditions favorable to the seed production and natural regeneration. What do it mean? It means that this preparatory felling helps or enables seed bearer. Seed bearer means those trees which give seed. You can say seed bearer. It enables seed bearer to develop their crowns to produce seed. Now if their crown is not well developed, so you don't have a very good seed. So what does preparatory felling help? Enables seed bearer to develop the crowns to produce seed. More bigger the crown, more better is the seed. So next objective is it creates favorable conditions on the forest floor for regeneration to come up. Two things it does. One, it helps the tree species to develop its crown. Developed crown will give seed. Second, it also make a favorable condition on the forest floor here for regeneration to come up. Means we have to remove some of the trees which is bit congested. So that congested trees we try to remove, which are crowns are fighting with each other, so that crown they develop nicely, and those crowns which are not developed nicely will not give very good seed. Once the crown is developed nicely, they will give seeds, which seeds will help for regeneration. So it will create favorable condition on the forest floor also for regeneration to come up. That is called preparatory felling. After you have ensured about the preparatory felling, now the regeneration felling, as I told, the first stage of regeneration felling, is seeding felling. Seeding felling. Now, it is not seedling felling, it is seeding, S-E-E-D-I-N-G. Seeding felling, it indicates seed. So seeding felling is defined as opening of the canopy of a mature stand to provide conditions like securing regeneration from the seed of the trees retained for the purpose. We are retaining, suppose these trees we are retaining for what? We are retaining for the natural regeneration, that is from seeds. So that is what the objective of seeding felling. Secondary felling is defined. This is the second stage of regeneration felling called secondary felling. After seeding felling, then second stage is secondary felling. Secondary felling is defined as a regeneration felling carried out between seeding felling and final felling. In between that, in order gradually to remove the shelter, will remove this shelter which was shelter the trees or shelter. Whenever I say shelter, it is overwood. We remove these shelters, gradually we remove, so that it admits the increase in light, and this light helps the regenerated crop for the proper development and growth. So this light is very important for the growth. This way we remove the shelter wood or overwood in one or two process. Secondary felling may have not only single, we may have to remove 2 times or 3 times like this. So it depends on the species. Now we are removing more number of trees, so we also give them a growing space here and sufficient light, so that the regenerated crop which has converted to sapling pole, they become a very good conditions as a young tree. And the third stage is called the final felling. Third stage of regeneration felling is called the final felling, which is defined as the removal of last seed or shelter trees. This is the last seed or shelter overwood or shelter trees. Now we don't require, no longer is required, no protection is now required, because they have grown enough. Now they can bear those frost, bear those adverse climatic conditions, so there is no protection further needed. Then we remove this final felling. So here this is called final felling now. So regeneration felling is including preparatory felling, seeding felling, secondary felling and final felling. Preparatory felling we don't need every time when we do a very good silviculture operations. Sometimes we need if the trees are very congested at the end of rotation. But the seeding felling, secondary felling, final felling is very important in the shelter wood system. In the entire shelter wood system, we will be doing this regeneration felling. So again and again, when I talk of regeneration felling, it will include seeding felling, secondary felling, final felling. And now, first of all, we have to understand nicely about the seeding felling. Now, let's go in detail about the seeding felling. As already I said, seeding felling is defined as the opening the canopy of a mature stand to provide conditions for what? Securing regeneration from the seed which we retain. Now what are the trees will retain? That is very important. So the object of this felling is to make uniform opening. We make it a uniform opening. As you can see here, you have a uniform opening in the canopy of the compartment for the favorable conditions. Where the favorable conditions should come? It should come on the forest floor in respect of what? Number one, of soil moisture, in respect of light, in respect of warmth, to enable the seed that fall from the trees retained in the overwood to germinate and grow nicely. So our objective here is to let the seed germinate and become a seedling and sapling and grow nicely, but seeding felling helps this condition to be favorable in the forest floor. In other words, seeding felling keeps two considerations in view. We have to keep two considerations in view. Number one is selection of trees to be retained. What are the trees in seeding felling will retain, and what are the trees will cut down? What are the trees we should retain, and what are the trees we should cut down? This is the first consideration we have to keep. Number two consideration is the distance that we are retaining and their positions. So in seeding felling, two very important things is there. One is selection of trees to be retained. What are the trees? What are the criteria of those trees? We'll retain that one. And other one is what is the distance between the seed bearer and what is the position. That is the two things we'll understand. So the trees to be retained have to be selected as the source of seed, because the trees which we are retaining should be a source of seed. And this seed, we should have a quality seed, because this quality seed will give a quality trees. So as the quality of the seed depend on the quality of the parent material. If parent material is very good one, then we'll have a very good offsprings. So the thing is here, the trees which we are retaining should be very good one, very quality one. Means to say that it is necessary that what type of quality will maintain? Number one, we'll try to have this one as a middle-aged tree. Will not keep very old one, will remove that one in seeding felling, or very young one is also not very good seed bearer. So we will try to keep the middle-aged tree. This is the first criteria, keeping the middle-aged tree. Then it should have a long cylindrical boles. It should not be a crooked one, because crooked one tree will give a crooked offspring. So we should have a long cylindrical boles and well developed crown. Crown should be well developed. And the tree should be free from insect disease or any defect. So ultimately, in short, I want to say, genetically superior tree should be there, which will give you the best offspring, or which will give you the best regeneration in future. So this is the first criteria, that what are the seed tree to be retained. The trees which are to be retained and the distance and positions are very important. The trees which are to be retained as a seed bearer should have a middle-aged tree. The old trees or the young trees doesn't give a very good and a vigor type of seeds. The tree should be long, clean, cylindrical bole, because a crooked tree may have a hereditary character to pass on their offspring the crookedness. It should have a well-developed crown. We should have a well-developed crown. The more developed crown will give more seed and more vigor seed. The quality of the seed is very important, because the regeneration depends on the quality of the seed and the quality of the parent tree. It should be free from disease defect. Number two is the distance between the seed bearer. The distance, what should be the distance? So their number per unit area, because the distance affect the what it will affect the regeneration on the forest floor. So the light and warmth depends the distance of the trees among the seed bearers, because the silviculture of the tree species, like some are shade bearers, some are light demanders. So what should be the distance? For example, the shade bearing species and those with heavy seeds require less openings, means we need not to keep too much distance, less opening is there, as compared to the light demanders and light wing seeds. If they are light demander, we can keep more distance in that one. Next is the position. The position of seed bearers in the hills. In the hills, it is very important what should be the positions of those seed bearer trees. So it is important consideration as it affects the dispersal. If you are keeping in the valleys, so the dispersal will not be that effective. So seed bearer, if you are keeping in the hills, in the ridges, in the top side, so dispersal will be more. That is very important. In the hills, the position should be on the ridges on the top rather than on the valleys. And on the other hand, not only the ridges and on the top side we are keeping the seed bearer more, we also have to think about the aspect and exposure. As already been discussed in the locality factor aspect, we have northern aspect, southern aspect, eastern aspect, western aspect. Always southwestern aspect are very hotter as compared to the southwestern are hotter as compared to the northeastern aspect. So how many trees will keep in southwestern aspect where it is very hot? So we'll keep more number of trees in the southwestern aspect as compared to the northeastern aspect. So a small table, it has been here to have us look of the number of seed bearer retained in the hills on the aspect. So let's have some species in the hills, like we have pine, Pinus roxburghi, then Cedrus deodara, then Pinus wallichiana, Pinus simithiana, and Abies pindro. Among all these 5 conifers, Pinus roxburghi is tropical pine, where temperature is been more affected because it is a tropical pine. It will not come in the colder or temperate areas, rather as deodar, kale, spruce, silver fir, they come in the higher altitude and colder areas. So cheer pine comes in the lower altitudes as a tropical pine. So we will take 2 things here. One is we'll talk of the aspect, because aspect will affect more for Pinus roxburghi as a tropical pine. So when we want to keep number of seed bearer per hectare on the cooler, means on the northeastern aspect, we'll keep 12 to 18 seed bearer as compared to southwestern warmer aspect is more trees, 20 to 25, and the distance among the seed bearer is, when we are keeping 12 to 18 in northeastern aspect, it is 24 meter to 30 meter distance of the seed bearers. When we are keeping Pinus roxburghi in warmer aspect, southwestern aspect, that is 20 to 25 seed bearer, then the distance will be 20 meter to 22 meter. Then let's come to Cedrus deodara. Cedrus deodara will have 45 to 50 seed bearers, and that is distance is 14 to 15 meter. For Pinus wallichiana is 25 to 30 seed bearer, distance is 18 to 20 meter. When we compare Cedrus deodara and Pinus wallichiana, Cedrus deodara is bit shade bearer, having 45 to 50 seed bearer, that is more seed bearer. And when we are talking of kale, that is Pinus wallichiana, it is bit more light demander as compared to deodar. Then the seed bearer is less, that is 25 to 30. As we go in higher altitudes, we will have Picea simithiana, which is more shade bearer. The seed bearer trees we are keeping is 45 to 50, distance is 14 to 15 meter among the distance among the seed bearer. And when we talk of Abies pindro, silver fir, the seed bearer we are keeping 75 to 87, means regeneration needs more shade. We have to remove the shelter wood very slowly. Maybe the secondary felling will be more here. So distance is 11 to 12 meter. So regeneration felling, as we have discussed about the preparatory felling, we have discussed about the seeding felling. Now let's discuss in seeding felling. We have understood about the what are the trees to be retained as a seed bearer, what is the position, and what is the distance among the seed bearer. Now we'll come to the secondary felling. So secondary felling is defined as a regeneration felling carried out between the seeding felling and the final felling, in order gradually to remove the shelter and admit increased light. For what? For proper development of the growth. Now we need this regenerated crop to be grow more nicely, taking the advantage of light, but slowly. Not we are removing like clear felling system. That it is the nature of the species, regeneration species. They require the light in very slowly as the regeneration progresses. So secondary felling, when the regeneration resulting from the seeding felling progresses, it requires more light. Now it requires more light. Seedling has to change to sapling. It has to be grow. As it has to grow, it requires more food, more light. So this is achieved by removing some of the seed bearer which was retained in seeding felling. In seeding felling, sometimes we retain more number, as in abyss pindro. So in secondary felling, we'll remove that one also for the proper development of seedling. So here we are removing the more number of seed bearer or overwood or shelter wood in secondary felling. So the number of secondary felling is, seeding felling can be once, but the secondary felling, some species require 2 times felling, 3 times felling in interval. So the number of secondary felling may be 2, maybe 3 as per the requirement of the species. Like abyss pindro, they require 2 or 3 secondary fellings, but in Pinus roxburghii they require only 1 secondary felling. So depends on the species and the progress of regeneration. Where your regeneration is not coming up and you cannot go for single secondary felling, slowly you will fell those overwood and admit the light to come as a regeneration keep on growing. So for such species, a large number of seed bearer are retained at the time of seeding felling, so the number of secondary felling will be more. If we are keeping more number of seed bearer in seeding felling, so when secondary felling comes, we have to go for 2 or 3 secondary felling for that one. So while in silver fir or spruce, Abyss pindro, Pisces simitiana, there may be 2 or more secondary felling, but in Pinus roxburghii or Chir, there may be none, only 1 secondary felling, because seed bearer is very less there, 12 to 18 per hectare. So similarly, in slow growing sensitive shade bearer trees, the number of secondary felling will be more in comparative fast growing light demanding pine species. So in pine species we can go for a single secondary felling, but in the species which are very slow growing or sensitive or shade bearer, we'll go for more number of secondary fellings, so that slowly we give them light and they grow up nicely. But when we go for a more number of secondary felling, the felling, logging, extraction of the trees which we mark for secondary felling do lot of damage for regeneration, particularly when they don't copies like silver fir and Abyss pindro. So that care we have to take, because secondary felling will cause lot of damage to the undergrowth by logging, felling, extraction. This is the disadvantage of secondary felling going in 2 or 3 more secondary fellings. So in regeneration felling, we have known very nicely about preparatory felling, seeding felling and secondary felling, about the light demanding species and shade bearer species. Now let's come to the final felling in regeneration felling. The third stage of regeneration felling is called final felling. Is defined as a removal of last seed or shelter or overwood after regeneration has been established now. And regeneration now, no longer you don't require any shelter of the shelter wood, you don't require any shelter wood now against frost, insulation or adverse weed competition. So you are fully satisfied now, your crop is well developed, so you remove those last trees also. But sometimes we used to keep 3 to 5 seed bearer per hectare, so it is not more, it doesn't affect more, because if we are keeping only 3 to 5 seed bearer per hectare, mostly we keep in Pinus roxburghii, because sometimes we insurance against the fire. If fire happens, all the regeneration has been burnt, so we don't have any source of seed. So for the source of seed, 3 to 5 seed bearer, we keep it for few years and then later we remove that 3 to 5 seed year, as we are now fully confident that the crop has grown nicely. Now after that we have to understand about the regeneration period and periodic block in Uniform Shelterwood system. Now what is regeneration period? So as regeneration period itself indicates the period for regeneration, that is from seeding felling to final felling, we are thinking that interval where the block or compartment is been regenerated. And what is periodic block? Block means now we are going to make some blocks under which we are going to regenerate it. In clear felling system, actually the copy is clear felled, but in the uniform system it is not possible, because we are depending on the nature. we are getting the regeneration on the basis of removal of overwood slowly and getting the regeneration to come. So this is not possible to regenerate the area naturally. It is very difficult. So what we do, we make these periodic blocks. So that's why, therefore, in order to ensure the entire forest is felled and regenerated systematically within the rotation. So if the Pinus roxburghi rotation is 120 years, within that we want to get regenerated the entire area. So it is necessary to divide the rotation into as many parts as the number by which the rotation is divisible by the time taken to regenerate the area naturally. Now what does it mean? For example, this is the entire area. In this entire area we want to regenerate Pinus roxburghi, and the rotation of Pinus roxburghi is 120 years. And the period which it takes to regenerate that area, we can call it a regeneration period, is, let's take 30 years. So how we will make this periodic block? So we will divide 120 by 30. So what we do, we get 4 here. So 120 divided by 30, we get 4, means we can make here 4 blocks. Under these 4 blocks we will go for regeneration and establishment of the crop. So this is regeneration period and periodic block. So my next lecture will continue on regeneration period and periodic blocks under the Uniform Shelterwood system. So keep watching my next lecture, lecture number 13 for regeneration period and periodic blocks. Thank you.